The NBA is based on perception and it's all about what they're thought about. So I really believe that the NBA have a tremendous ability to make a great impact collectively. Right here.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Basketball Central. I'm Brad Fay. With the ever-changing events in the world, we are going to address what has happened in the last few weeks. A very important discussion with Alvin Williams, Sherman Hamilton, and Paul Jones is on the way. Another Swish or Brick with Danielle Michaud and Eric Smith. And up first, the return of three-point Grange, Michael Grange, and July 30th, Michael, they moved it up a day, at least not moving back. But of course, there are roadblocks in the way, and that includes your first topic with the likes of Dwight Howard and, more importantly, Kyrie Irving speaking out and leading a group that says we need to reassess before we move forward.
Right, and a really interesting effort by Kyrie Irving, who people need to know is the vice president of the NBA Players Association. So he's kind of doing his duty. And some of the concerns are, how do you keep the focus on the social justice issues that have kind of dominated discussion for the past couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. Make sure that doesn't get lost as the NBA comes back to play. You also got to consider, there's some concerns about what the life in the bubble will be like, and who is being served by returning to play, and also on the health concerns. Really, is it worth it? And I think it's interesting that Kyrie Irving is taking the lead here. They all have valid concerns, and this is the time to raise them.
We just marked the anniversary of the Raptors championship, which tells us we would normally be into the off season now, and the strange setup, there are some teams that are into the off season, but everything is open for debate and in terms of moving forward, including the Detroit Pistons trying to fill their general manager's position. What's the latest?
Well, from all reports, Troy Weaver from the Oklahoma City Thunder is kind of a leading candidate, and you can understand why. I mean, when you look at the NBA, there's a couple of organizations that really stand out. The Raptors would be one, but Oklahoma City has just consistently been the team that seems to do more with less. And Troy Weaver's been Sam Presti's right-hand man there, and I think significantly is a minority candidate. And I think in this time, and at all times, right? The NBA, they need to do better in terms of giving the league a representative look beyond what's on the floor and who really has built this league. So I think that's an important consideration. So that looks like it's moving ahead.
And also think of Weaver's position in that trade forced on them with Paul George and what they got back. They may have gotten even on that trade with the Clippers, which is incredible. Michael Jordan, as we saw in The Last Dance, and has been brought up again over time, that he was not one that was going to speak out. He kept a pretty neutral playing field when it came to that. LeBron James has not taken that tact. And how key is he now in what's going on with not only the NBA, but the bigger picture in the world?
Very interesting. I mean, he's been at the forefront of players wanting to return to play, but he's determined and has proven over and over again that he can have a social voice while still taking care of the main thing, as he calls it, what he does on the floor. And his latest initiative is More Than a Vote, and it's a very important issue across the U.S. where minorities, blacks in particular, had systematically in the last couple of years, 2 to 3 years since the change in the Voter Rights Act, had their access to the polls barricaded, blocked, not literally, but figuratively. And so in this time, when you look at what's happened since George Floyd, the effort of getting out and vote, teaching people, who may be targeted by some of these changes in policies, how to overcome the obstacles, what the obstacles are to voting, is a very, very, very important gesture. And again, LeBron James, he can identify a pitch and he can knock it out of the park. And this is going to be a big part of his legacy.
All right, that is 3 Point Grange with Sportsnet.ca's Michael Grange.
People
people are just fed up, and I think it's time for a change.
Raising black kids in America, I'm scared as hell.
Nah, I'm sorry to say, if you don't see it, I mean, you must be blind or something.
We have leverage right now. We have a moment in time. We want justice.
Yes.
And that's what we are here. That's what we're going to do today.
All right, three faces that are around our NBA broadcasts on Sportsnet and also been around the game of basketball their entire lives at every different level. It's Jones, Sherman Hamilton, and Alvin Williams. The NBA gets a lot of credit for its diversity, guys, when it comes to minority owners, when it comes to women in refereeing and coaching and front office positions. Sherm, are you satisfied with what your sport and what the NBA has done to be a leader, given what's going on right now around the world?
I wouldn't say satisfied, Brad. I'd say that there's good momentum, there's good initiatives, there's good intentions with what the NBA is doing, and I believe the NBA has done a very good job of being a leader amongst the four major sports in terms of their diversity and their willingness and their determination to make sure that they have that at every level. But I wouldn't call it satisfied. I'd call it a progress in motion.
Jonesy, I'll get Alvin's thoughts right after you on how far the NBA has come or how far they have to go, but take us back to where things were, say, 2 decades ago.
Well, I mean, the NBA, let's face it, when David Stern came in as commissioner, the NBA had some issues, and he did a good job of straightening that out. And as Sherm said, it's like running a marathon. They've come a long way, but there is a long way to go. And I think that was probably the start of, and to me, a lot of it boils down to economics. That was the start of giving African-American players some economic footing, some stable economic footing. And now you see it moving forward with athletes, in acquiring generational wealth and then not being afraid, feeling comfortable and safe in the system to speak up. So, I mean, I think that was established years ago. And let's face it, there were other guys years ago that were willing to make it a platform and put it forward. I think we're still hearing from him now. I think of, Lou Alcindor, when he changed his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He was part of that meeting in Cleveland before the '68 Olympics, and he chose not to go.
And you mentioned off camera Mahmoud Abdul Rauf, who refused to stand for the anthem or recognize it, bowed his head, and he heard the feedback now, and we still talk to him about that. Alvin, do you remember, either for you or players that you played with, where you were given sort of strict instructions not to speak out and not to protest, so to speak?
No, from a business standpoint and from silent whispers, you understood things that you could say and things that you couldn't say and things you could do. I remember, national anthem, you had to sit there, you had to stand like hands by your side or in your back or in the front. You couldn't go side to side. So they gave you different things, certain limitations and rules by that. But, the NBA is based on perception and is all about what they're thought about. So I really believe that the NBA have a tremendous ability to make a great impact collectively. And Jonesy hit it right on the head. It comes down to economics. And that's the thing that's going to water down possibly the ultimate issue at hand, which is the social injustices.
Well, Sherman, we talked last spring about the power of sport. I mean, almost 10 million people watching the same thing at the same time when the Raptors won their championship. So take that power of sport to a different level with even more at stake now. Is there any doubt that athletes and leagues like this that are in the spotlight can make a difference towards change?
Well, I believe sport has always been able to make a difference. I think now it's just got to spew outside of the arena, outside of the field of play, and it's got to be a very significant impact based on what's happening socially around the world. So these are players. These are players who have a platform and who have money, but they don't have billionaire money like a lot of the owners in this league does. So they've got to use their platform wisely. And if the goal is to create social justice, especially for minorities, especially for Black minorities, then I think that has to be focused on, that has to be deliberate. It has to be a process that is determined to have requests and demands put in place. And it's also got to be something that is not just talked about for the next month or so. It's got to be something that's hammered home until those demands and those requests are met.
And Paul, you had Wayne Embry on the radio a couple of days ago, and you asked him, and he's been through everything with this for sure for a long time. And you asked him why he has confidence that this one might take.
The common goal is for equality. The common goal is to, for African Americans in the U.S. and people of color around the world to flesh out racism. And in talking to Wayne Embry, who, his wife marched in the South in Selma, and he was the guy who basically helped found the Players Association, and the first African-American general manager. And, Wayne tells us stories about playing and going to towns like St. Louis in the 60s, where he had to eat in the kitchen and had to stay with families, couldn't stay in the hotel, and those kinds of things. The goal is for equality. And right now, everybody has to focus on that. And, Wayne was encouraged, and I'm a child of the 60s, and you go back to it. Now we've got people who have the ability to make change, siding with or getting in line with the minorities that want the change. So now you've got everybody focused on a common goal, and people are finally saying this has to change. And it's the diversity of the group that's demanding change that has me hopeful going forward.
Alvin, you bridged the gap from the end of Michael Jordan's career to the baton being passed to LeBron James as the new face of the league. Michael, as we know, chose not to speak out on a lot of things. We won't get into that, but LeBron has taken on that role now, and it gets greater and greater. How important is that from the player's standpoint, where the guy in the league sets that tone?
I mean, if LeBron James, as great as a player he is, if he's not the guy or the person that should be speaking out on these things, then it's not going to be productive. So, but luckily for us and for everyone, he is the guy that talented, visible, and everything like that can speak on a high level of all of these things. And I think that is a great thing when you have a guy that's leading the force and leading the charge like a LeBron James. But I would like to talk about, when we talk about sports making a difference and making a change, I think it definitely can, but it has to make it from the model of sports, right? We can't use sports as a society for entertainment and bring people together from a fan standpoint. But if you look at it, sports or a successful model, you see the intricacies and the inner workings of a successful thing that comes together, and everyone will benefit from it.
Alvin brought up an interesting point, but we're talking about what sport does, and we're talking about players and using their platform. But understand, this is a systemic issue. This is an issue that is not coming from the bottom up where the players are playing the game. It's coming from the top down. So now we've got to look at it and say, well, a lot of focus is on the players and using their platform and what sport can do. Well, hold on a second. What about the people that own teams, that run the leagues, the people involved on that level of organizations? That, to me, is where the change has to happen.
And Sherm, just to punctuate that and follow that, the good thing in the NBA is we're starting to see minority owners. We're starting to see people that have diverse points of view and want that inclusion and diversity, pushing the other owners. It's tough when you don't have a seat at the table. As Sherm said, when it comes from the top down, they need people that are pushing for that. They need people, and what better way to have minority owners? The NBA's got 3 of them. They're ahead of the curve. They're not, the marathon's still not over yet. There's still a long way to run, but at least they've got their shoes on and they're moving in the right direction.
For this issue to be taking place and really be impactful, that the dollar signs have to be thrown out the window, how much you can, right? So that's the most difficult part, and that's the most upsetting part, because something as serious as this, it's always going to be viewed as, all right, what's the bottom line? Because this is a business, this is a corporation. So collectively, that economic piece has to take a back seat until it's used to a point that we can change the system. We can put things in order, like as Sherm talked about, because it starts from the top. And I think, once again, I'm going over with it, but that economic piece, somehow it always waters down the ultimate message and the ultimate drive, if we allow it to.
Guys, great perspective from all 3 of you. We appreciate you joining us. Thanks for this.
The name of the game is Swish or Brick. You probably know it by now. And joining me once again, Eric Smith, Alvin Williams, to give us their takes on what's floating around the social sphere. And I have to start here because it has been a very hot topic. It's a pair of centers who obviously know that summer body season is right around the corner, that being Marc Gasol and Nikola Jokic, who posted some very slimmed down photos, big time. Alvin, at that position, is that cut figure a swish or a brick?
It's a swish. I think, and in today's NBA, the lack of physicality now that's required from the big man, that's a perfect body. You're mobile, you can defend better, and you're just in better shape. And I think, especially with someone like Joker, who came into the NBA this season, and they were saying he was out of shape early on. Now you got time to concentrate on your body, because it's very difficult through the course of the season to concentrate on your body and shape it the way you want it to be shaped. So I give this a swish.
Man, I'm saying swish for both as well, and I'm marveling at the transformation of the Joker. Like it's night and day, and I can't believe that transformation, Danielle, in only 3 months. So absolute swish, and I'm a little bit scared if I'm facing the Denver Nuggets right now, because if he was able to put up triple doubles, at will, the way he used to look, I can only imagine how much more athletic and how much more versatile he could be right now with dropping however much weight he did.
Now, speaking of slimmer, friend of the show, Kendrick Perkins, has been looking lean and mean. He told me back in March he's been working hard, and here he's showing off the handles. E, what do you think of the skills?
I'm giving it a swish. I mean, the big man was never necessarily known for his handles, but he's out there working with Phil Handy and others, and he's trying to keep himself, fit and in shape. And to his credit, he looked in the mirror one day, as you said in your conversation with him, he realized, what the hell happened to me? And he got out there and he's dropped a ton.
I give it a swish for those reasons, but I'll give it a brick for that handle. I wasn't feeling that handle. His footwork was a little off. He was a little off balance. That basic between a leg crossover and all that stuff going straight. Man, you gotta go side to side. You gotta put a little wiggle with it. You gotta get your shoulders into it. So the skill set, total brick. But the approach, I give that a swish.
I want to see Al do it for next week's show. Show us how it's really done.
Yeah, let's see the Phil Handy dribble challenge, Al.
Oh man, that's no problem right there. I do that in my sleep.
All right, Kevin Durant's got a new side hustle. He's now a stakeholder and community partner in the MLS with the Philadelphia Union. Al, do you think this side hustle is a swish or a brick?
We'll see. We'll see the results. The industry is growing, and I guess it's a good time to get in it if you have the resources and you have the information. So I will give it a swish, because once again, I love seeing players, become more diverse in their business mind and their business approach. So I give it a swish. Hopefully it all pans out for them.
And I'll say for the same reasons, Al, I'll give it a swish, but also I like the fact that, trying to diversify outside of basketball and into a very seemingly rich growing sport like soccer, and also trying to grow the game then within the United States, within North America, especially for so many young kids that might not be exposed to other sports. And I think it's a perfect opportunity for Kevin Durant to kind of lend his voice and his leadership. So an absolute swish.
Now, how about 60-year-old Auntie Curry, as they're calling her online? It's former WNBAer Chantel Tremitiere, who tells her nephew to keep the car running as she goes out and silks it from deep. Alvin, I think we can agree it's pure swish, but how about the swag? Is that a swish or a brick?
The swish all the way. I'm watching this woman. First of all, she's lawless. She's running up on people's property. She's going in stores, shooting. She's knocking half court shot, wherever it was, just going any place. So her swag is on 100. So swish, definitely.
Swish for sure, no doubt about it. I can't imagine we're not 3 for 3 on this one. The one in the store was awesome, but outside as well, as Al said, with the car running, and then the way that she talks the game too. So absolutely swish.
I should also put some more respect on her name. It's Dr. Chantel Tremitiere. She's got her PhD and her MBA at Auburn University, and Barack Obama now follows her on Twitter after these online escapades. So she really can't lose, fellas. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks as always, Danielle, Eric, and Alvin. And as always, we appreciate your input with the inbox. Last time around, we wanted to know what you liked best about the NBA's plan for its return. And the 16-team playoff format, otherwise known as the traditional 8 East and 8 West, is what you like best, followed closely by no home court advantage, which gives it kind of a tournament type feel, obviously, which will make it pretty interesting going forward as well. This time around, we want to know if you agree with what Kyrie Irving said, saying that maybe this is not the time for the players to come back and play, given what's going on around the world. We want to know yes or no. We'll hope you continue to join us for Basketball Central at Home with a broader discussion on what is happening in the world as it pertains to the sport of basketball, and a focus on a potential return of the NBA at the end of July. I'm Brad Fay. We'll see you next time.